believe we got Andrew on with us. Andrew, you with us?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
All right, brother. How you doing?
Oh, not bad.
What's up, Andrew?
I just lost Jared. Oh, okay. He's calling back. We got it.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you. We got Jared with us. Jared, how's it going? No? We lost him again. Call dropped. All right, well, we got Andrew. We'll let Jared figure it out. So what's up, Andrew?
Oh, not much. Just looking at all these voters.
I was gonna say, did you go vote today?
Yeah. I want to see that video.
Yeah, I was driving through town and I could barely get through because people couldn't wait to go vote for evil. So trying to go get my dinner, and I was stopped by all the brilliant voters out there.
Hello.
Okay,
Good.
we got Jared.
Good.
How's it going, man?
Yeah. Chilling, man. Sorry, guys. I got my son tonight, so I'm multitasking like a motherfucker.
What's up, Jared?
What up, brother? How are you guys doing tonight on Voters' Eve?
Making fun of the voters.
Right. Yeah. Well, they don't know the damage they're causing.
Kind of depressing.
Yeah, what about that? Like, every voter is an uninformed voter because, they're uninformed about the 14th Amendment. So what's up with that?
Well, I remember
Well, they definitely don't. Go ahead.
Earlier this year we had said that 2014 will be the year of the 14th Amendment, and I think we're getting there, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, true story. Public school system, that's a sham within itself. And they don't teach us about our true history or the relevance of how the Civil War altered things. And, it's an indoctrination center. I vowed my son would never go to a public school. He's going to be homeschooled. He's going to learn maxims of law by the time he's like 8, because they're very simple.
Good.
Well, maxims of law, actually, they teach you more than just. It doesn't teach you necessarily the law. It just teaches you almost a lesson within one sentence,
right?
And you can apply it to almost anything.
I mean, they're basically common sense.
Right.
For the most part.
So how long do you think it will take for people to wake up, or is that just never going to happen?
That's tough to say.
Yeah.
What's that? Come again?
That's tough to say. I mean, I see a lot of people waking up. The more the NWO smacks people in the face, and the more the police state smacks them in the face, that's when they're willing to actually start questioning things. And it's kind of sad.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Same thing happened to me. It's happened to friends of mine. They thought I was crazy. Now they listen.
Right.
Same here.
Yeah, I'm saying that too.
Some people really some people have never really had it's kind of crazy to say it, but there are people out there who haven't really had a bad police encounter, or, they're just so they're so normalized that and so indoctrinated that when they're driving down the street, they're doing 40 miles an hour in a 40 miles an hour zone, in their nice little car, and they've only been pulled over once or twice, and they've never actually experienced what it's like to be, harassed by
victim
these
of the police state.
Right. So until they experience that firsthand, they're never going to say, "Oh yeah, police are bad." but it's only going to take that one time where they're out at a birthday party or whatever the case may be, and they're out drinking, they had one or two beers, and then all of a sudden their life's destroyed. Now they have a different opinion of the police.
Yeah, it's based on life experience. I think those of us who are lucky enough to have that experience, we wake up a lot quicker. For whatever reason it might be.
Do you think it's the pain we get out of that we wake up out of, or is it the amount of information that's coming that's waking us up? The pain or the information? Or it could be both.
I think it's both. I think it's multifaceted.
It is. For me, I was very young. I was lucky enough to be a young troublemaker, So I learned at a young age, and plus I had, a family around me that were awake and kind of always told me how things were. So, not everybody's lucky enough to learn at a young age, where some people are in their 30s when they... Right.
My parents certainly, or my family certainly didn't wake me up from anything.
I'm in the same boat.
It's the other way around for me. It's me trying to wake them up. They're coming around. They're coming around, though. Yeah, some of them are coming around, yeah. Yeah.
How about that?
I mean, we don't have any, it's not like we have chats at the dinner table. Anytime I eat with my parents or anything, I definitely don't bring up that stuff anyway.
No.
Hey, I'm not allowed at the dinner table. They're like, Andrew, just go sit over there.
Damn.
Hey, when I was growing up, we didn't really even sit at the dinner table, Sat in a living room and watched TV, or I went in my bedroom and ate, or that's how that went.
Hey, you know what? We can just blame that on the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. All roads lead to the 14th Amendment.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Actually, one of my favorite memes that I've ever came across was from the Secrets of Knowledge, or what's that website, Jared? You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not quite sure.
It's the tree with all the apples, and it talks about the 14th Amendment.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
That's probably one of the best. I mean, if we could get that image and rehash it a little bit with, all the different branches and what it says on each branch, I think it could be a little bit better. But it's a really good illustration of all the branches and facets of the 14th Amendment, what it does, what it creates, and all that.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I made that a couple of years ago when I first ran into PAC and LB. And I started reading all that stuff, and actually the first night I met Regina and Byron on Facebook. They sent me a bunch of links to that stuff. I stayed up all night reading it. So I'd been through all the commerce, sovereign citizen, all that nonsense, and it's like the fog lifted and everything made total sense to me. I read everything I could find that night. I stayed up till 5 in the morning the next day. Just, I don't know. It was crazy. It was an epiphany.
But try getting other people to do that, read something that's not that interesting to the average person.
Yeah, the same thing happened for me. I went through all the commerce stuff, admiralty, and the sovereign, all that lost, fake or fiction or whatever you want to call it. That's not accurate information. I went through all that, and I just said, none of this really makes sense.
Right.
And you look around, and nobody's ever winning with these arguments. And then my buddy came over one day. I haven't seen him for years, and he goes, "Hey, I got this book that you're gonna want to read." He goes, "It's everything you talk about, but it's accurate." So he brings me the book and sat on my table for a couple of weeks, and he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, did you read that book?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "You got to read that right now." So I was like, "All right." So I started reading it. Within 10 minutes, I was hooked. I couldn't put the book down because it's right away everything started to fall into place for me. So anyone who has even an elementary understanding of how law relates to the New World Order, that's why I always tell them to to read the Red Amendment and then do your own research from there with the footnotes, because it's all in there.
Yeah, and it's all backed by law and historical record, and it's really nothing that the other patriot gurus kind of shoot from the hip. It's like you can verify 90% of it just with a little diligence.
Yeah, you can read the Red Amendment 6 times and never not that you won't understand it, but you won't get the whole picture, because I'll just I have it right in front of me right now. Let me see how many. Just the footnotes. Where are we here? Footnotes. I believe there's over 600 footnotes, if not more, in this book. Yeah, there's about 600 footnotes in the Red Amendment. So this is really, it's one of the most in-depth study books you can pick up. And when people hear me say law, they think, oh, you're using the law and you're using their law, but it's not like that. It's not law like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's not what we mean when we say law. This teaches you, how to correct your status, how to correct your position, and use what they're, a lot of the stuff they actually provide for you to use. It's called, having not a way out, but having recourse, essentially.
Yeah, having a remedy.
Right.
And people like to group law into this one general term, and it's, and I did when I first started looking at things, and what tripped me out is all the different kinds of law, and there's law superior to other laws, laws that have to kind of mold into, to be just and whatnot. And American law is on the bottom of the totem pole. Because we have natural law and international law, law of nations, which all are part and parcel to how the laws of this nation started, or this union of multi-nations, which is something we should kind of talk about for a minute. This is the United States is a union of 50 sovereign and independent nations. It's no different than the EU otherwise, or other than the fact that the federal government created its own citizenship. And they did that with that 14th Amendment. But, yeah, well, I jumped down the rabbit hole head first, and, it widened my eyes big time.
I was on a radio show the other night, and the host said, so what do you suggest? Do you think everybody should just expatriate and everything will be better? And I said, listen, if I could get every American in one room and I could speak to them for 5 minutes, I would say, everyone should correct their status, and we can go from there. And I can't guarantee there'd be no war or anything like that because, of course, the federal government's going to fight for their power. But I believe personally that that's the remedy, on an individual basis, but of course, working together is the remedy.
No, I heard the show was actually very well put. It was actually very good. I guess one question I'd have to ask is, because a lot of people seem to confuse this whole expatriating thing with the whole sovereign citizen deal, like that guy, who walked out of the courtroom a few months back, the dude with the huge beard and all.
The Mountain Man.
Mountain Man, yeah. So what is the difference for all the people at home listening?
Jared, do you want to take that, or?
Yeah, or I'll, take part of it anyway. Yeah, sovereign citizen, that's an oxymoron, because you cannot be a sovereign and a citizen. It's like saying king subject. A sovereign creates law. And in American jurisprudence, the people are sovereign. And we're not necessarily sovereign individually. We're sovereign in a collective capacity because we ordain government together.
Nations are sovereign.
Yeah, nations are sovereign, and that's the people, plural. So for someone to say they're a sovereign citizen, they're claiming something that never was or never will be. You know, and I honestly think that's a COINTELPRO thing by the government to kind of get people off the right track. Because a lot of the principles are true, but, you know, in law they're not.
You could be right there.
The reason why it's important is, for example, if somebody expatriates from the United States and doesn't formally declare allegiance to their state, which is, again, state meaning the people, they're literally their neighbor, that's what state means, they end up being stateless, and now they have no protection under any law. They're basically just hung out to dry. They're lone wolves, and that's the mistake. So when people say, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen, some of them actually did expatriate, and they didn't do it properly. So now they're protected by nothing. You know, that's why these people get brought back into the courtroom and they're able to be prosecuted.
Yeah, they're considered an illegal alien at that point. And you know, our remedy of expatriation and claiming the nationality of a state, of a de jure state, which is one prior to the 14th Amendment, is we're part of a nation. And actually, after the Reconstruction that happened in the 1860s, a national of a state would be considered a lawful alien. And you'll never hear that term, you know what I mean? And people are probably like, what the fuck's that mean? And basically, we're alien to their laws, you know, or those who are. I'm not a national yet. I'm working on it. But those who are national of their state, they're alien to the United States because, according to international law, they're not subject to it. You know, the 14th Amendment created that citizenship, created that jurisdiction, and they're accepted from it. You know, they're not exempt, they're accepted, which means you're not in the purview of any of that.
And a lot of times people say, oh, you think if you just expatriate and, you know, you go through a status correction, you think they're just going to leave you alone? And the answer is yes, unequivocally, because there are dozens of nationals, you know, who are left alone and haven't been bothered. Some of them, you know, have been visited shortly after their status correction, whether it was by the IRS or, I don't want to say exactly which agency it was because I don't remember off the top, but LB could.
I think one was the DOJ.
Yes, the Department of Justice. And basically they visited a lady and just said, do you understand what you're doing? They asked her a few questions, and I believe they were gone in an hour. You know, so, I mean, the system knows this process. They're familiar with it, you know, and every time a national communicates with the de facto, they always get a cordial response, and, you know, it's very, very short and just have a nice day. So, you know, there's plenty of evidence that it works fine and nobody's getting dragged into court because they're using the administrative process.
But do you think that could attract any unwanted attention?
By whom?
Well, I mean, like it's going to the de facto government, and you're kind of an enemy to it, right? So I just feel like, you know, maybe they can target you that way.
Well, the fear of being targeted, you know, LB brings that up a lot. He says, you know, that's why you have to do it with the PAC Alliance. You have to be part of the PAC Alliance, which I don't agree with because, you know, it's not PAC's law. It's, you know, it's American law. But
right.
The reasoning for that, of why he says that, is because, you know, lone wolves are out there, he thinks, and they can't be protected. But I don't necessarily think that's true. But
so how would being in the PAC Alliance help protect someone?
Well, it's safety in numbers. You know, the more people that grasp this information, you know, that's when we can start taking action and, you know, create remedies for ourselves. You know, just recently, a guy from Texas, He expatriated about 2 years ago, I think. Anyway, he works for a major cable company, and he notified the IRS that they can no longer take federal income tax and Social Security nonsense out of his check. Well, they didn't comply. Well, he got together with LB and a couple other mines, and they sued, or they were going to sue the IRS and that cable company. Ended up they caved in, and what's that?
For discrimination.
Yeah, because when he expatriated, he used the administrative default process, which is basically staying out of court and just trying to do it honorably. When you go into court, there's a controversy. So they appreciate when you do that out of court. Maybe not the government with this certain situation, but they'll never answer it anyway. But long story short, the IRS cut him a check for the money they owed him. So obviously, they don't want to mess with it. Honestly, I don't think they want to create.
It's actually, and it's actually him and his wife as well. They both work for the company, and they're both not subject to the income tax.
They're accepted from it.
And you see, that's the cool thing about it. Like, I would not like to pay tax, I wouldn't like to pay taxes, because I feel like when I'm paying taxes, I'm like contributing to genocide and enslavement and other shit too, And
How about that?
It's true.
Oh yeah, I've always considered the idea. Like, I like this remedy you guys are proposing, but like Jared, you said you're still a citizen, right?
Technically, yes.
Okay, and how long have you been looking into this? Like studying it at least.
Say that again. Sorry.
Or like how long you've been studying this law on 14th Amendment?
I've been studying it for about a little over 2 years now. For me, which is funny how you start off the program, talking about cannabis and stuff. I grew cannabis for a long time in Nevada, and I'm only maybe 15 miles as the crow flies from California. And there's a big difference between the legalities regarding, that plant. Long story short, I got in trouble for it. An associate of mine threw me under the bus, and and I had been studying stuff prior to that, but it really kind of lit the fire under my ass to find out how I could defend myself, and that's pretty much how I came across, LB and his work, and Byron, and which led to Andrew and Andy and all these people, and so I'm 2 years deep,
It's a good
I'm actually
story,
on probation next week, and I'm starting my process here shortly.
So how can expatriating yourself help you with the legalities of growing pot? I'm interested in this.
Well, go ahead, Jared.
Jared, go ahead. Well, you go ahead. I'll supplement.
No, you go, because that actually pertains to what you were just saying. So.
Okay. Well, in law, there's two types of crime. There's a malum prohibitum crime, which is basically rules of the society, and there's malum in se crime, which is physical harm to someone's person or property. So what I did was a malum prohibitum crime, because the government says you're not allowed to grow a plant. And there's no victim to that crime. I mean, the victim's the state. And the reason the state has jurisdiction over me for a victimless crime is through that 14th Amendment and my citizenship. So essentially, keeping it kind of short, being a national of the state, you're only subject to the common law, which pretty much dictates that any crime must have a victim, like a living victim. In contrast to the civil law, which pretty much whatever the government says goes. So
if I could, just in layman's terms, the second part of what he's saying, essentially a national, it's not that you're not under any law, so to speak. It's that the only time you're going to have a controversy or be affected is if you harm somebody or their property. So unless you're doing no wrong, there's really nothing that applies to you, because most, if not probably more than 90% of the laws are all statutory in nature. And if a national is not under statute, then which law could really, he affect or be affected by him?
Exactly. And the way I try to explain this to you is very simply, say Andrew's a customer at Walmart and I'm an employee. They have a dress code there, and that dress code only applies to me. It doesn't apply to Andrew, even though we're in the same territory. That's private law. That's how the 14th Amendment works. And if I violate the terms, if I violate the terms of their policy, they can terminate me, they can suspend me, but they can't do shit to Andrew. He's accepted from it. So, kind of a mini analogy of how private law works.
Okay.
But if Andrew was to go into that store, and start throwing bottles around and start breaking stuff and hurting people, well, then he becomes subject, because that's a malum in se crime. When, my dress code issue might be considered malum prohibitum.
Basically, when you contract with the government, you're under rules and regulations. You have agreed to uphold your end of the contract. So if you breach the contract, there's going to be penalties. And U.S. citizenship puts you under, endless amounts of contracts. Whether you think you're signing it or you think you're obligated or not, you are. So what we say is, you might be a citizen by mistake, because you usually become a citizen, through your parents when they sign you up, through the allegiance, through the birth certificate, and then Social Security. So that's how that kind of sort of, I call it a contract. Some people don't agree with me, but
do you think that's like forcing that contract onto the person? Because I always heard you guys say it's voluntary.
They trick you into, well, it's not that they trick you, I shouldn't say that. It's the environment, it's all around you. It's like, the 14th Amendment is the matrix, because most people say, well, I can't live my life without a birth certificate. I can't live my life without a Social Security number. How am I going to drive my car? And yeah, it's difficult, but that's why we say the more people, the better. Strength in numbers. Each nation should have, a place or a network where, if enough people expatriate and become nationals, now we have in each nation, a place where we can go and network. And if someone gets pulled over for traveling and then they get their property stolen, now we can work together and fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, do you have a rough estimate of how many, like a consensus of the amount of people that have actually expatriated?
Well, it depends on. I mean, are you talking about through PAC or in general?
Yeah, I guess, because, from the sound of it, the way that PAC does it sounds to be the most legitimate way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know an exact number. I haven't really spoken to LD in some time, but I guess the number is around 100. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, but
okay.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah, it could be higher, it could be lower. I'm not exactly sure.
I hope
they're spread everywhere. There's Florida, Massachusetts, California, Wisconsin. I've heard there's 30 or 40 plus in Colorado alone.
I know of at least 3 personally in Texas.
Yeah. Oh yes, Texas too.
And there's also a guy in Georgia, I believe it's Georgia or Alabama, and I believe his name is also Andrew. And he actually owns a farm and has a website, and he does some kind of organic farming, and he operates, a private business, and he doesn't just, he didn't just expatriate, and correct his status. He's actually thriving. So
Right.
So that's amazing. I got to get in touch with this guy because if he's got all that, then, I mean, he's got to, because my concern, of course, as you know, is being able to have a bank account, and because you have to have a bank account to do most of this website work and to have advertisements and all that.
Well, now you're talking about getting into trusts.
Okay.
That's the issue of trust.
It's definitely part of the matrix. And it's, it's difficult for people to exit because they're so reliant on all these things.
Right.
And I feel to do many things you have to have, this or some kind of alternative. For me, I'm in Nevada, so I'm pretty lucky. I haven't had a bank account since 2007. Haven't had a driver's license since around the same time. I work for my family, which is cool, and which is going to make exiting a bit easier for me, because I'll probably go from an employee to a private contractor so I can deal with the IRS on my own. And it's my family's business, so I plan on making it so hopefully other people understand what's going on, and I can hire them, as private contractors, and we can work together on multiple levels, not only in business, but being able to make it easier for nationals to make a living, without getting caught up in their web of bullshit.
Yeah, every time I hear you guys talk about nationals, I keep thinking to myself, like, diplomatic immunity for some reason. I know it's completely different, but it's just how I picture it.
No, we've actually had people, I've actually seen somebody who I think at one time was affiliated with PAC or had something to do with PAC at one point. Yet they had like a diplomatic, they made like a diplomatic immunity card, and I was just like, oh boy, we're going to stop that from spreading because that's not consistent.
Yeah, that's a whole other level right there.
Can't be mixing law forms. As soon as you do that, you're screwed.
Yep.
Right.
That's called joinder.
A question that a lot of people ask, they're worried about is like the fact, so I say you expatriate and you're driving down the road, you get pulled over or whatever, like what's the whole process that you're going to have to go through that? Because it's obviously it's going to be a hassle somehow. So I mean, what is the process when you get pulled over? Like what? You got to do something. You can't just be like, hey, I'm expatriated. You can't pull me out. You can't do anything. Like they're going to have to deal with something. So
no tags, no insurance registration.
Right. Like how
the cops not be like, oh, okay.
Right. How would you deal with that?
Well, I guess there's a couple angles to go about that, and there's a lot of debate within our group about how to deal with that. And the purists are like, no driver's license, no anything. You deal with it with your expatriation papers, which have already been, approved, so to speak. It's a subsidiary contract with a de facto that they recognize your status. So a cop's going to have no clue what that means.
Right.
And he may write you a ticket, take your shit. You have to go to court and defend that. Some other people talk about actually getting the license, but signing for it under threat, duress, and coercion, which is supposed to invalidate any contract. Because you're doing it because, threat to your person or property. So, I know there's still debate on that. Depends on which road you want to take.
Because you really need to focus on your speedometer so you don't get pulled over.
Well, again, that's the whole reason for unity and strength in numbers, because if nationals, were a lot bigger and there were more of them, they would have their own plates saying specifically that they're not for hire. This vehicle is only for traveling. This automobile is only for traveling. And, once that becomes established, sooner or later a court is going to probably by mistake because they don't want to rule on it. But they might, it hasn't happened yet. What ends up happening whenever these cases get brought to court is they have unpublished court cases, so they're not on record. And to expand on that, people talk about courts of record. Well, courts of record don't actually exist because a court of record is a common law court. And that's a whole other topic, but I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, and they're not going to rule on this stuff for the simple reason that they don't want to make any kind of record of it because they don't want that in the public eye. It's easier for them just to dismiss it on a technicality, or in case of the gentleman from Texas, he was going to sue IRS and the cable company, and they weren't going to allow that to happen. They were just going to let it go because, as soon as that gets in the public eye, people are going to start asking questions more, and that's the exact opposite of what they want.
Right, that's definitely not what they want. No, definitely.
So in a way, we have an upper hand if you understand those principles, and you approach it correctly. I mean, none of this is easy. I mean, you have to retrain how you think, how you look at things. Even your language, like, you're not allowed to drive. Driving is a commerce term. That's why Andrew's saying travel. Because, you don't need a license to travel, but you do need a license to drive.
That's crazy.
It's a completely different lifestyle, and you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I haven't had a bank account in forever. I go to the casinos and cash my check. I'm lucky because I live in Nevada.
Right.
As far as that's concerned, if I have to pay for something, I go get a money order. If I want something online, I go get a prepaid debit card. If you really think about it, there's ways around things. So.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what I do. Prepaid money card. No bank. I guess it's still kind of a bank account because it does go through a bank, though.
Yeah, it's a little cleaner, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a bank account for, I don't know, a good 5 or 6 years just because I kept getting screwed over or, overdraw your account or something, and you have to pay an extra $35 on that, and every time they, go to, run it, they would charge me, another $35, and, so I get, 3 overdraft fees for just one charge, which was ridiculous.
Well, I mean, banks, the whole banking thing by itself is just, interest and all that. It's unbelievable that people actually, they can't wait to get a bank account. And especially Christians and, Bible-thumping Christians who supposedly read the Bible, but, if you read the Bible, you would know that you're not supposed to have interest and usury and unjust weights and balances,
Right.
Yet they can't wait to go get a bank account, and then they talk about the Bible, so... it's all, and it all really comes down to natural law. So, and that's what the Federal Reserve does is they say, we're gonna take over, we're gonna be your money god. That's what they are.
Are you allowed to have a passport if you expatriate, or is that just completely separate?
I don't know.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
That's another tough one. I do know, and I've heard of people doing, making their own passport, and essentially using the Apostille Convention to make that legitimate to go to the countries that have used that treaty. These are issues that need to be brought up once there's enough people. Because right now it's pretty tough when these few nationals are scattered here and there.
I've heard LB talk about the passport issue before, and I know LB is going to be doing some radio shows coming up soon, but I'm pretty sure I've heard him talk about the passport issue a few times.
Okay, so there is something to it then. I mean, something can probably be done, and there is a workaround.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, what people fail to understand is, I'm from Massachusetts. If I live literally right on the Connecticut border. I live I can throw a rock and it can land in Connecticut. Going from Massachusetts to Connecticut, that's actually technically international travel, if you really want to get technical, because each state is a nation, so you're going from one nation to the other.
Right.
And that's one of the ways that in the 1860s, that's one of the ways they kind of tricked people into buying into the 14th Amendment system, because in one state you could do something that you can't do in the other, and they said, we'll make the law more consistent and it'll be easier for everybody else. And not realizing, not looking into the future what that actually meant.
Right.
I was gonna ask that. That's a good point. Like natural law and common law, they, when I looked into them, they were kind of. I really like those philosophies, and it just makes me wonder, how did we give that up before the 14th Amendment? How could we just let go such a, great idea?
We did, such as like with the whiskey tax or whatever it was, stuff like that. I mean, what was it, just unconstitutional back then? I mean, because they were victimless crimes.
Well, natural law and common law, those are, living under common law and natural law, that's actually not that easy of a task. If you're not out committing crimes and robbing people, I guess it's pretty simple and straightforward. But I actually had put something online the other day about things like strict liability. When you don't have car insurance, you either have to have a bond or, under strict liability, you don't have the insurance company to go to bat for you. You don't pay premiums every month so that they can bail you out, if you hit somebody's kid in a school zone. Under strict liability, you have to buy that kid. Every kid you kill in your car, you have to buy him, and that's not very cheap. So that's why people don't want the natural law, because they want to have limited liability, which is insurance. Insurance is just a limited liability program. So strict liability means you buy the kid, and limited liability means the insurance company buys the kid. So that's why people are like, no, you know what? I like this civil law. I like private law. I don't have to be responsible. Somebody else can do it for me. Not so, essentially that's what it is.